I'll give a very short story, which is taken from Hindu tradition. A young man who was a monk and had lived in a completely male society went to a guru and said, I have lived my life and I have decided to be celibate. And the guru told him, in order to make that decision, you must be released into the whole world, into the real world for 1 year. Then after that, you can come and tell me whether that is the path that you have chosen. So he went. And those of you who understand Hindu stories, they are gurus and they are sannyasi and sannyasins. So he went and for the first time met a girl. And he came back to the guru and said, I met another person. And when I greeted her, my body was abnormal. Then the guru said, go out and understand who she is. He came back after 1 year, he told the guru, I do not want to be celibate. And to me, armchair Pan-Africanism without being tested is not Pan-Africanism. And Pan-Africanism is not about romanticizing things that are fossilized in the past. Pan-Africanism cannot be the things we used to do. Pan-Africanism must be the things that we do which are informed by our reality and informed by interaction through other civilizations. They are beautiful things that I see from India. I want them to be incorporated. Look at the whole idea of what we now call Ubuntu. Ubuntu is, we now say it is African, but it's from the isiZulu and Isikos. But we find something, you can find something that is unique to you. So I'm never worried. The only thing is, as long as you have your true north, you know that this is for the benefit of Africa, and you are agile enough. In my other life, I'm a martial artist. And one of my teachers in terms of his martial art philosophy is Bruce Lee and his system of Tao of Jire Kunedu. At one time he's asked, if you want to be a good fighter, what must you be? He said, you must be fluid. A good fighter must be fluid, must not be rigid. It must be like water. When water gets into a cup, it takes the shape of the cup. When it gets into a bottle, it takes the shape of the bottle. It can be solid, it can be gas, but it's still water. And to me, that is what Pan-Africanism is all about. So what we must tell our young men and women is that wherever they are, they must try to live to certain ideals. And I think in many ways, when you carry yourself with dignity and humility, then your Pan-Africanism is like the piano, the black and the white creates a symphony. And those of you who are from South Africa must remember a man called Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. Sobukwe said in 1960s, before the Sharpeville massacre, when there was the apartheid regime was at his height, he said, there is only one race, the human race. And I agree, but with different shades. And Pan-Africanism, therefore, can be infused. Your child, one of the things that I encourage people, if you have a tongue, which we call mother tongue, history has now demonstrated that you speak other tongues better when you have mastered your mother tongue. There was a situation in Africa, particularly amongst the middle class, when it was a status symbol. When you tell your colleagues, when you are Muganda, you know, my child does not speak Luganda. He only speaks English. And I'm sure in French, the same thing. So we must have that pride. Have you ever wondered, for example, why the Chinese are bringing Confucius? There is not a university, perhaps not here, but there is not a major university in Africa today where there is no Confucius Center. Why are they doing it? Because culture, cultural dominance, and we are taking it. Do we have Pan-African institutes, universities where you are teaching? They are starting to teach Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa at the university, at the Friendship University in Russia from next year. Are we teaching Yoruba in our universities? Are we teaching Hausa? So in a nutshell, Professor, what I'm saying is that we must define what Pan-Africanism is, and it must not mean, one of the things that I find very annoying is that when an American, these foreign heads of state are visiting our countries, then we parade young boys and young girls in sisal and say that is our culture. Our culture must have changed. Unless we simply want to demonstrate this is what we used to do. But it doesn't mean that that is what we are doing now. Things have changed. So I hold the view that there is discourse for Pan-Africanism. Right now, through my own little foundation, we are beginning to found Pan-African institutes. We are founding one in Eden University in Zambia. We are founding one in Lukenya University in Kenya, and the Unity University in Hargeisa. And we are saying we want to define. We don't want to romanticize Pan-Africanism. We want to give it practical meaning. Will we make mistakes? Yes, we will. Will we be corrected? Yes, we will. 100 years from today, will it be richer? Yes, it will be. The Confucius that the Chinese are talking about, how many years did he live? Many years ago. So I hold the view that that is what we must do. Today, as I conclude answering your question, the whole idea of public lectures is dead in many universities. I remember at one time at the University of Nairobi when I was still teaching, I invited from Uganda one of the best constitutional legal minds in Africa, Professor George Kanyeihamba, to come and deliver a lecture. I had to go to classes to beg students to come and listen to him. To beg. And it happened to me again at the University of Nairobi when Wole Soyinka was at the university. I had to go running from class. I say, we'll give sodas. Which is what they used to give us when you are donating blood, you remember. Can you believe it? But you go, and you yourself are university administrator. The whole idea of public lecture is about public discourse, because an academic must know that we can disagree. Is a competition of ideas. If your idea is superior, it prevails, and we disagree in an agreeable manner. Today, because we have lost the culture of debate, if you hold a different opinion, you become my enemy. Even in the academic field, you find somebody, you come in the morning at the university, you greet Professor Mugendi. The man is not replying. Right, because we had a discourse. He says, and you ashamed me in public. How can an academic be ashamed? Because the idea that I hold today may be proved wrong the following day. So I think, Professor, that that is what we must do. And the rot, and you know these things, many of you, the rot is actually up to this level. I was talking at, somebody's from Strathmore University here. We were holding a discussion about artificial intelligence at Strathmore University. And I said this, I said I'm a disruptive thinker. And I said, okay, you are IT experts. Who's IT? You are spanner boys and spanner girls for Google. Yeah, because you are not in control of the technology. So you may be doing things, you have said, oh, cloud. Who's cloud? Are you in control of the cloud? Today we are all on website. Whose website? Who is controlling that website? A church here can be turned off like this. So in order, and this is the Pan-Africanism that I'm talking about, let us appropriate that technology and begin to control it from Accra. The Chinese have done that. Weibo, TikTok. But we have not. We are still gleefully Google, cloud. You can be switched off like this. My Twitter account. That's not your Twitter account. Elon Musk sitting in Seattle can do it like this and you're finished. But what our IT at the university, I want to hear that there is a collaboration, because right now, Professor, you know, within East Africa, we have university, you vice chancellors meet, both in Kenya and in East Africa. In West Africa, it's the same. I want to hear that one of the things you are talking about now is IT. Because we are going into the fourth industrial revolution, the fifth industrial revolution, and we are talking artificial intelligence. But are we in control? Are we in control of the drone technology? We are just consumers without being in control. And curiously, I look at what is happening. China, for whatever it is worth, the only media that I watch faithfully is CGTN and CNC, to just understand. Within 30 years, these fellows have done marvel. You know, in my ethnic group, some people come from my ethnic group. If you had a shirt called Japan, which was Japan, it was the cheapest quality from Japan. Then if I said, your shirt is Korea, it means it was from Korea. That is in the textile industry. When I was alive, there was a time when the radio that we used and knew was Grundig. Today, tell me where there is Grundig. Nokia came, Samsung came. Look at what the Koreans have done. Look at what the Vietnamese. Vietnam, by next year, is going to produce more coffee than Kenya and Uganda combined. Vietnam. I tell people sometimes morbidly, look at your undergarments. They are made in Vietnam. And when you go to eat today, look at your toothpicks. So, this is particularly, as I conclude answering that question, is in this area of artificial technology, really we must take charge. If we don't take charge, because there's no going back, the only question, who is in control? The Indians now are amazing. You go to India and you see what is happening at Indian University, both in that sector, because technology is controlling everything. It is medical sector, is agriculture. Look at the patents that are being issued in Israel. Little Israel. Israel registers more patents than all African countries combined. Little Israel. Israel is smaller than Greater Accra. Last question you said. The problem we have in Africa is the disconnect between the professional and the policymaker and the quality of politics on critical things. And I think my own view is that we must keep on trying. Sometimes we judge ourselves too quickly and too harshly. Because if you look at the history of many African countries, some are very young in terms of trying to domesticate, if you may. And I'm using the word domesticate very guardedly, because there is a sense in which certain areas and certain knowledge is universal. The laws of physics don't change because you are in Africa. But there is a sense in which when you implement physics, they can be applied to address specific issues. So when we are talking about decolonization, we are talking about the sensitivity of curricular articulation and implementation to the realities on the ground. Take, for example, agriculture. We now know that Africa is losing her seeds in the area of agriculture. We don't control what we eat. And we know that there is a conspiracy through monopolies such as Syngenta and Monsanto. And they are present in Africa. You have the 1 acre fund. They are everywhere. They are to be found everywhere. Can't we, when we are crediting our faculties of agriculture, make demands of them? That one of the things that we are not going to do is to allow genetic manipulation in a particular direction. The Russians are doing it. The Chinese are doing it to a certain extent. The Vietnamese are to a faculty of agriculture, and our research institutes, they are also informed by that reality. Right now, you know, for example, in agriculture, Norway has the largest storage or concentration of seeds in the world. As I speak now, in the next 2 years, China is going to overtake Ghana, Togo, and La Côte d'Ivoire in coffee production. Fact. I think Malaysia has already overtaken Nigeria. So I'm saying that in those specific areas, it is you, the academics. You are vice chancellors. Why do you sometimes sell yourselves short? Keep on making noise. Keep on making noise. Don't surrender. Don't think. Regulators, and there are regulators here who in that specific area of agriculture you can now begin to inform. Look at the area of management. There is nothing that annoys me most. I don't know whether they are accountants here. If they are accountants here, you hear at the end of every meeting that we have read your books. They are now conform with universal standards. Whose universal standards? Why can't we have, when we are looking at specifics, that they are African standards with certain standards which are peculiar to Ghana, even when we talk about universality, because business is different. But African governments have their books of accounts being examined by Price, Cooper, and Waterhouse, Deloitte and Touche, Ernst and Young. Not Boateng and Boateng. If Boateng and Boateng formed an account team. So in a nutshell, Professor, what I'm saying is that this is work in progress. And I think that something is beginning to happen even in East Africa, and can now see people are coming together through research institutions. And what we must do is to finance this thing. Part of our problem is financing. You remember, for example, in the health sector, in 2001 in Abuja, African countries say we are 5% of our budgets, not GDP, budget, in financing health. Which countries ever did it? Rwanda and Mauritius and Botswana at 3%. The rest, they don't even pay. So how are academics going to engage in research? In many of your universities now, I was talking to a Nigerian professor just after the ASU strikes, for example. They lost 600 medical personnel. 600. As freshly baked graduates going into Australia and Canada, after you've trained them, they just walk into the theater there and begin work. Meanwhile, maternal mortality is alive and well. All the diseases that we thought we had eliminated are coming back. So, Professor, I think it's not going to be easy because, number one, because of the quality of politicians we elect. Yeah, that is, our problem is actually that. I was listening yesterday just this morning, to a Chinese official. And I know I said we can never catch up. The man is talking about the games, the Asian games that I think are commencing next week. There are 44 facilities. And they are thinking how those facilities are going to be utilized after the games are over. And they are thinking about linking them to institutions for sustainability. I want you for 2 seconds to think about own African country, what we do with them. What we do with those facilities. Zero. Very few, except in South Africa. In certain areas, South Africa tries to do a good job. Mauritius tries to do a good job. A few African countries. Rwanda is doing a very good job with their basketball. Pitch, which they are now using. So there is a sense. So it is not all gloom and doom. You know, sometimes we don't give positive examples. Those of you who are from South Africa, for example, will remember that South African institutions are the ones that are doing better than everybody else because they had a firm foundation. And there is something I forgot to mention. I'm overextending my answer. But education is so important. How many of you remember, for example, the 1976 Soweto massacres? It was about education. How do you train people? In what language? The Cameroon massacres about the use of English and the use of French. So it can't be done, Professor. And I now, as I grow older, in my younger days, I used to misguide myself that everything would happen in my lifetime. I now know better. I now know that mine is to play my part. And once you play your part, that is the best you can do. And the other thing we must do as Africans is to document. We don't document things. So that your good ideas, they just disappear. But these fellows, these other civilizations, what they have done very well is documentation. The mortality rate of journals in African universities is without comparison. If a journal survives for 3 years, then you hold a party. Thank you very much.